Hello and welcome to Don't Bury the Lead. We do the WWE Smackdown recap every Friday night live here on YouTube. My name is John Zindel. I'm joined by my co-host here, Dom Scarcella. Dom, go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm a wrestling fan. I'm a wrestling analyst. And boy, do we have a Friday the 13th WWE Smackdown to talk about. But, enough gabbing here, John. Don't bury the lead. What's our top story from tonight's Smackdown?
Yeah, top story's got to be the main event here. Pretty good one with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens going about 20 minutes here in a disqualification end where the bloodline jumped in and the ref threw the match out and they just sort of beat the hell out of Kevin Owens for the last 2 or 3 minutes of the show. But yeah, that's the lead going in here. What were your thoughts on the match tonight?
There was a lot of extracurricular activity going on here. They set it up well all show long that Sami was supposedly by himself. The bloodline was not here. Sami Zayn had to take care of business on his own for Roman Reigns. This was Sami's chance to prove himself to Roman. And I think we got a very good match. And then at the end, it kind of ruined it from a pure match standpoint, but it furthered the storyline. So, take it and leave it. We knew coming into this match that there was something bigger than this match happening. So you really can't be too disappointed that, oh man, we didn't get a clean finish. But to that end, the reason why you could be a little disappointed that we didn't get a clean finish is because this was a pretty darn good match. And on paper, you may not have thought so. This is Kevin Owens, a former Universal Champion, a guy who's taken Roman Reigns to the limit fairly recently, a guy who's been going one versus the world for a few weeks now after Survivor Series, versus Sami Zayn, who's had a lot of trouble getting success, finding his confidence. He's been almost a comedy jobber for months. And yet this wound up being a very competitive in-ring match for a long time. I mean, they let this match go 15 minutes before it broke down at the end. I mean, anything about the match itself surprise you, or was this, having watched WWE so long, was this kind of what you expected them to do? Because me, I was going for the ride. I was surprised at first, then I was half disappointed, half, all right, I guess they had to do that. I'm not going to knock them for it by the end. But what did you think about the match itself?
I thought it was pretty good. I've seen them wrestle so many times in the past. It kind of was on par with their previous matches. They have really good chemistry together. Pretty cool corner spots where they were setting up like a high spot in the far right corner, and then they eventually executed a high spot in the far left corner. So they really did a good job working the corners. I guess it was some sort of suplex Owens did. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. Owens did to Zayn. So I think they did a good job working that. I saw a dive by Zayn, rolled my eyes, but I can't let that hurt the match. Like, it's just something I have to accept now, right? So, I don't like the dive, but they did it. And I thought it was a pretty good match. One thing that's kind of interesting with Owens and Sami Zayn is they both look like guys that aren't pro wrestlers per se, with their body types.
Right.
Like they kind of look like they would be guys that would be working at a Best Buy and you wouldn't think twice. Like, oh yeah, that guy works at Best Buy. But when they get in there, they can both really go. And they're both pretty athletic. It's kind of astonishing, really.
I liked their chemistry as well. I haven't seen them wrestle each other
Mhm.
one-on-one before, and I don't know what their past is like in that regard as far as matching up with each other, working with each other. Um, but this was KO being sort of a brawler early on, and Sami being more of a pro wrestler early on. And I think that gave Sami the advantage for for most of the match. I mean, he was kind of holding its own. It was a little surprising for me to see Sami work this. I mean, I know he can go in the ring, he can bump, he can sell, he can hit moves when he has to, and he
Yeah.
can play his character. But this was interesting to see him, sort of rise to that one-on-one level in stature, as far as like where you're not watching the match and going, "Oh, there's no way Sami would be able to do this to Kevin. Kevin
Right.
Owens should squash him." But you got the idea that no, Kevin Owens should not be squashing Sami Zayn. Like Sami's formidable enough. He's quick. He's athletic when he has to be. And you're right. He doesn't look it. He comes to the ring wearing, the loose fitting long pants trunks. It looks like sweatpants and his t-shirt. Sami Zayn invariably looks like he just rolled off the
Yeah.
couch. Like he was watching SmackDown himself. Maybe he had a blanket on top of him, having a snack. And it's like, Sami, you're up next. And he just kind of has no chance of doing it. He just rolls off the couch in his sweatpants and t-shirt, and
Yeah.
now he's in the ring. So it belies the fact that, like you were saying, he's athletic. He executes his spots. He sells well. Um, you mentioned how well they work the corners and for some sort of high spots there. I mean, I had a lot of um, I had a lot of notes really that were just about these guys either doing reversing each other's moves, or the fact that they um, were so well at hitting a move and getting a false finish. Um, Sami early on in the match went for a cover. Kevin kicked out, so Sami just covers him right away again. Like he's getting frustrated. Except this time he hooks both legs, and Kevin Owens kicks out again. So you could see Sami trying to get the match over with early if he has any sort of slight advantage, which you would expect an
Yeah.
underdog to do. Like if you can
Mhm.
steal one and get out of there. And then the match goes on longer, and now Kevin Owens's big striking sort of comes into play more. And then we see Kevin Owens doing more than just brawling, which was good, because it would be a boring match if one guy's just brawling and the other guy is trying to, do more of the acrobatics. That's a tough sell if the guys don't
Yeah.
give and
Right.
take a little bit. Like there were times when Sami brawled a little, and then Kevin Owens hit some high impact moves. He did some reversals. He was able to, work with Sami grappling a little bit. So I like that. Were there any spots that you wanted to describe for us that really stood out to you in just the way these two guys work with each other? Because you brought that up. I mean, you've seen this before. So um, anything that really stood out to you about these guys, who apparently have worked together a long time together, being able to do it
One
tonight
I
in the main
haven't
event of
seen in
SmackDown?
a while, and one that was pretty unique, I'd have to say. It's when they're both on their knees and they kind of like are both dead and they're like laying on each other. Then they start like slugging, and then they both kind of like boost up and re-energize, and they just start going firing punches at each other. That is a unique one. That's kind of like a throwback to like the 80s. I feel like with Hogan would do stuff like that where he'd hulk up, but they both kind of like hulked up together to like pick up the intensity. I don't think I've really seen that too
Yeah.
much. So that's kind of a wonky one that I think worked pretty well to kind of get the crowd back into it. Um, but I thought it was a pretty good match. Like, not the best thing we've ever seen. Kind of a predictable throwaway finish where they're just like, yeah, we can't have Owens lose because he's going to face Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble and definitely will lose. But they still need to make him look a little
Mhm.
stronger. But then also they have a great wild card with Sami right now, so you don't want to have him lose
Mhm.
either. So just like all right, let's just do the bloodline jumps in and just, finishes the job here, if you will.
Finishes what was really supposed to happen in this match. Like, this was Roman's plan
Yeah.
all along. It wasn't really to have Sami go out there by himself. It was to lull Kevin Owens into the false sense of security that Sami was out there by himself. And then it's just a sneak attack for Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, and Solo Sikoa, just trying to soften up Kevin Owens 2 weeks in a day from
And he's
Royal
doing a
Rumble.
great job, Sami, with like being that gimmick where he feels like he's running with the bad kids in high school, and like he's one of those good students, and you're just like, you can see like he's got a conscience when he's
Mm-hmm.
like, they come in, they beat the hell out of Owens, and he doesn't like it, but then he kind of like, all right, I'll go along with it, like he's reluctantly in this group, part of him, so it's an interesting character and gimmick they've developed for sure.
Sami Zayn is a
Yes.
mark. Sami Zayn is a total Roman
Mhm.
Reigns mark. He believes. And the awkwardness at the end with Sami's disappointment. On one hand, you wonder, is he disappointed that they're kind of beating up someone who used to be his friend? And then, the close-up camera picks it up. Sami's really disappointed because he thought he let down Roman. He thought Roman believed in him and believed he could win this match one-on-one and could beat Kevin Owens. And then to have these other guys come out here and in a sense lose the
Mm.
match for Sami. He's disappointed sort of more for that than because he's suddenly having feelings for his used to be friendship with Kevin Owens. Yeah, Sami Zayn's a mark. And it's wonderful to watch a mark in a group of
Right.
smarts. Because like Roman Reigns is the ultimate smart. Like, he's the manipulator. He's the guy
Mm.
who knows better. And it almost is kind of the guy who's trying to win someone else's approval, in
Mm.
the schoolyard.
Mm.
I mean, that guy's the mark. He believes it. He's trying to do it. And then the question is, the person whose approval he's trying to win, is that person genuine, or is he kind of manipulating the mark? And so we've got this thing that is Roman, and are the rest of the bloodline, is Paul Heyman the wise man? Are they all just manipulating the mark? And so, like, Sami has a little bit of sympathy going for it. Because, of course, all the wrestling fans, we're not marks. We're smarts. We can see it. And so now, we kind of feel a little bad for Sami. Like, oh, they're kind of taking
They
advantage of
made it pretty
Sami Zayn.
obvious. I mean, like, Heyman will talk to him and he'll convince him all this stuff, and then even in the earlier segment, like he's like, yeah, like he's convincing him to do all this stuff, and he's like, we're depending on you, and he leaves, and
Yep.
Heyman's like what a schmuck, like he puts his hand over his head, like he's what an idiot. So it is, yeah. I think they've made it pretty obvious, but still really working. I still like the storyline. It's still, I'm not sick of it yet. So kudos to WWE.
Storyline wise, I like it. I don't want to pass up. You mentioned the one spot where they're both on their knees and then just started like gaining energy and slugfest up with their feet. Um, any other spots you enjoyed out of this match? Because until it broke down at the end into the disqualification, this was a good match.
No, I don't really have anything else to mention. Maybe if you have anything. Okay, yeah,
I
go
got a
for it.
couple. I got a couple. I like the fact that when Owens hit his top turnbuckle splash early in the match, um, Sami kicked out at like 2.5, like a really great late kick out. Like, he almost got pinned. It wasn't a strong pin. Like, Kevin Owens was kicking out a little
Yeah.
stronger earlier on Sami's pin attempts. Sami just kicked out on that move. That was neat. There was another spot where we've seen Kevin Owens do that pop-up power bomb where he throws the guy into the ropes. Sorry, Irish whip, And then as the guy comes off, KO kind of uses his momentum to throw him up in the air, and then that height right into a power bomb. Well, Sami leapfrogs it. Kevin Owens with the pop-up power bomb attempt, Sami flat out leapfrogs him, and then when he spins him around, turns it into, I think they called it his Blue Thunder Bomb, which is his version of just the sit-down power bomb, and he gets the 2 count on Kevin Owens. There's another spot shortly after that, heading into the second commercial, where Sami does that variation belly to back suplex, where he doesn't grab the opponent around his waist for it. He grabs him sort of up around underneath the armpits and hoists him over that way. Sami hits that. Owens no-sells it and just crushes him with a clothesline. And then Owens drops down, and that allows him to go to second commercial. So that was a neat little spot. I like Sami getting his knees up on the Swanton bomb attempt, because you can see as the match wears on that Owens is kind of getting stronger. So this was like supposed to be Owens is going to put him away here, and Sami gets the knees up. And then Sami gets the 2 count on Kevin Owens after getting his knees up there. The battle on the top turnbuckle late was fantastic, where Kevin Owens turns it into a brainbuster on Sami, but of course neither one of them were fresh enough after hitting the center of the mat there. So Kevin Owens is slow to make the cover. Sami kicks out. And then that leads into the ending sequence where Sami's setting up the possible haluva kick and the bloodline out of nowhere. So this was a good match. I mean, not a blow the doors off the place match, but this was a good match up until they had to do the spoiled finish there with the disqualification. So entertaining throughout. They gave us a good long match before they just had it break down.
I think so. That's what I totally agree with. I'm glad they actually gave us something in the main and then had the breakdown versus just it being some storyline main event where it was 10 minutes and then they went 5 minutes and then they jumped and there was actually some wrestling out of it. But so pretty good main event. Anything else about this one, or should we jump to the next match here?
They mentioned Solo Sikoa's undefeated since making his debut in the WWE. That was just a random comment by the announce crew.
That's weird.
There.
They don't talk about
but I hadn't realized that, and they really are building him up. You mentioned this, not to cut you off there, but you mentioned this when we were doing our end of year, which for us was end of quarter grades on all the SmackDown folks. Like, comment, subscribe, tell us what you like in the comments, and go searching Don't Bury the Leads channel for our 2 year-end grading videos that we did. They're about 20-ish minutes long, one a little under 20, one a little over 20. But the grading video where we went through lots of people, over 24 SmackDown wrestlers. You mentioned Solo Sikoa as a guy who had been just kind of in that average range, and he had a chance to step up as a guy who'd come a long way for a young wrestler. They're trying to push him in this area. I mean, he does that, running splash off the ringside barriers onto the announce table to put Owens through the announce table sort of at the end there after a couple of Samoan spikes basically laid out KO on the announce table. So with all the gold in the bloodline, they really are setting up Solo Sikoa as the enforcer, the hitman here. What do you think of what looks like somewhat of a push that they're giving to Solo, especially since you kind of saw it coming a month ago?
I thought he was really young at first, and I looked up his, he's like early 30s or late 20s or something like that. So it's about time to give him a push. And I just, kind of reiterate this, but he reminds me a lot of Samoa Joe, just a young version of Samoa Joe. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
No.
So just a younger version of Samoa Joe. It's I like Samoa Joe a lot, and I feel like, and I didn't realize that either, that he was undefeated, which is weird. I feel like they should push that a little bit more on commentary. When somebody's undefeated, that should be like something they
Yeah,
hammer in
right?
your brain, because that just shows how well he's done recently. But yeah, good direction with him. The whole bloodline, like, as I mean, has been the highlight of WWE. Um, so some other stuff that happened here at the 9 o'clock hour. Um, we had
You don't want to go to your favorite guy?
who's that? I know. I'll go right to the opener. Honestly,
Go
okay.
right to the opener. This was we had technically 4 matches tonight. Um, we really had
Right.
one. It was
Yes,
the
this was the
opener.
match.
It was like a full, really good match. Let's go to that. I mean, the night, the rest of the shit, like lots of action early, lots of action late, kind of slow and vignette and recorded TV show for the middle hour
Yeah,
20 or so. So yeah, man,
that's
I think that the next big thing that happened tonight was we finally got the payoff of Gunther
yeah,
Braun Strowman in a match. And what do you think? A different kind of match for
yeah.
Gunther?
So Gunther goes over Braun Strowman relatively clean. I'd say. I'd say clean, really, over Braun Strowman, which I was like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. But also, every time I see Gunther wrestle, it's good. This guy only has good
Yep.
matches, which is insane. It doesn't matter who his dance partner is. He can wrestle with anybody, and they're always good.
Mhm.
It's I think he's pretty special at this point. I don't think there's a lot of guys that
Yes.
go in and can have matches that are compelling to me, who's watched a lot of wrestling. That, let's face it, like sometimes there's a match on when you have Madcap Moss and Karion Kross, you're just like, all right, well, probably could not watch this and nothing would change. Gunther always gets it out of me where I'm like, dude, this match is really good. And they mentioned I think on the commentary, they said he's like a generational talent. And there's a lot of hyperbole from these guys on commentary, but I'm like, he is really good. I mean, it's not even it.
Yes.
So I'm just sort of blown away with how good he's been throughout the course of our viewing of SmackDown. Um, and then
Mhm.
tonight, was a great example. He had so many different spots to work the shoulder, like stuff that made sense that I didn't really forgot about. Like even the shoulder, like he has him by the wrist and he starts shoulder blocking into his shoulder. I was like, that's a good one. Like usually that's a pretty common trope, right? In pro wrestling, there's a specific injury and they work that specific injury, and that's a great simple thing to do, but the different maneuvers that he was able to do tonight on the shoulder, I was like, yes, this is great. Another thing, just more about this match, you really can't teach size. Like, they're both so huge. And there was one point where Strowman had Gunther up and kind of like backdropped him, and it was like insane.
Mhm.
But like if Rey Mysterio and some average guy did that, like you'd be like, okay, not that big of a deal. But they're both so huge that when they do that backdrop, you're like, whoa. Like the ring looks like it's about to
Mhm.
explode because they're just so massive. So can't teach size. How about you? What did you think of the match?
You brought up the size of the wrestlers, and you said his name, Rey Mysterio. We saw Gunther wrestle Rey Mysterio. Now we've seen Gunther wrestle Braun Strowman. When he wrestles Rey Mysterio, Gunther's the giant, and Rey's playing, the David versus Goliath. This match, Gunther does more of the David stuff,
Yeah.
trying to take down the big Goliath. So role reversal for Gunther. Not a lot of guys who can have a great match with Rey Mysterio and have a pretty darn good match with Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman not known for having long matches not known for having great technical matches. I do want to get back to Guenther, but before we do that, I want to follow up on something you said about working over the shoulder and how it becomes a trope in pro wrestling. You go after one spot, you try to injure a guy. Yes, it used to be a common thing in pro wrestling to do.
Yeah.
However, it kind of fell out of favor during the Spot Fest era
Yeah.
because no one's ever really injured in Spot Fest. Guy does spot, guy gets up, he hits his move. Guy gets up, he hits his move. So a great job by Braun Strowman tonight, showing us that he can do the wrestling psychology, that he can play that game with Guenther. That,
Mm-hmm.
Braun Strowman sold the shoulder the whole match.
Yeah, it was an impressive
He
outing from
allowed
Strowman.
that to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think made Strowman a more credible performer because coming into this match, I was wondering what we were going to get out of Braun Strowman. He
Yeah.
does the thing where he runs around the outside of the ring and just shoulder blocks people who, for some reason, just stand up for him
And
like
there.
bowling pins. He does other things where he's just bigger than everybody. Like that's his move. He's bigger. You can't teach size, and apparently that's his move. He's bigger. Well, in this match, he had to do other things, and I think this was really cool because it working with Guenther made Braun Strowman show more of his ability in the ring. And so I think this was good for both guys, even though, like you're saying, it was a clean finish here. You were mentioning Braun catches Guenther on the top turnbuckle. So Guenther climbs off the ropes after stunning Braun Strowman. He like held onto his wrist and dropped down and really creative way of basically driving Strowman's head into the turnbuckle there. And then as that's happening, Strowman's stunned, but still kind of standing on that second rope inside of the ring. Guenther slips inside the ring while Braun's still a little disoriented and uses Braun Strowman already being up as a way to hoist him up for a power bomb. And so Guenther winds up winning on that power bomb for the pinfall. Shades of all sorts of other things we've seen. WWE fans will probably most likely remember something like this from, I think was it John Cena versus Big Show, where Big Show wound up going into the corner and getting caught almost laying across the ropes in the corner.
You're
And
testing
that
my
allowed
knowledge. I'm not sure.
Cena to just kind of sneak in, like Big Show's already up, so now Cena can sneak under him, put him on his shoulders, and get the F5 that way. It's like, okay, if I don't have to, how can I get him into a move where he's way up here without me having to pick him up and put him there? So there was always a little bit of creativity in using the ropes, using the turnbuckles, and they did that here tonight. Good finish. We did see a little bit of interference, but it really didn't affect the closing sequence too much. Yeah, I mean the Kaiser and Vinci, the two pests came
The
out
other
and
guys.
and tried to interfere a little bit, but Strowman just kind of took him out on the outside.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, one thing I liked about the match as well is I didn't know if Strowman is a heel or a face. It's sometimes a little confusing with him. But he was in Green Bay and he had on shoes that were the colors of the Green Bay Packers. So you're like,
Yes.
okay, Cheap Heat, he is the baby face.
Yep.
Whatever. We know he's the baby face. You know Gunther's the heel. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't really have all that much to add in addition to what I mentioned about this match. I think it was the match of the night. And just to reiterate,
Start to finish. Yeah, this was match of the night, start to finish. Yep.
yeah. And he only has good matches and it must be tough to follow. When you're Rey Mysterio and you have to shoot a promo after these guys rip it up, you're like, and you're out there with Karion Kross, you must be like, geez, all right, let's go. Let's go try to keep them going, you know?
The rest of the show kind of got slow and vignette, some live, some recorded. So I guess they were hoping that the first match being as good as it was would kind of, there'd be enough of a good feeling coming off of that where, even if we started sinking, we're still sinking, but we started off so good that, even if we're deflating a little bit, we're still not like, oh, this show is terrible.
Yeah.
A
You
couple
know,
other Braun Strowman spots I did want to mention, just to show how Gunther's working the small man style in the match. He keeps going after that arm. Gunther's got an arm bar on Strowman's left arm. Strowman powers out of it by kind of getting to his feet first.
mhm.
And then, selling that his left arm isn't that strong, but he gets his right arm under Gunther and now picks up Gunther, who's still got the arm bar on, all the way to a vertical base, and now drops Gunther backwards. What a great move to showcase that Braun Strowman really is the monster of all monsters, and it made Gunther look small.
Mhm.
Like, to just have somebody do that, it made Gunther look vulnerable, and in vulnerable in a way that we haven't seen before. I mean,
Right.
Gunther in some ways was the underdog in this match, not in overall body of work and total technical skill. And obviously he's the champion, but in some ways he was made to look like the guy who was fighting the uphill battle against, you can't teach size, this much bigger competitor. And so props to, Braun Strowman's almost always in that kind of situation where he's just the bigger guy. But Gunther's not in this type of situation where he's obviously the smaller guy.
No, this is the first time we've seen him ever work, not as the big man. But
Mm-hmm. Or not even as an equal. Like Sheamus is about the same size as him.
and even just to echo your point earlier, Strowman has just been in a bunch of squash matches, and
Yeah.
I'm just not interested in like, okay, there's a job where he squashes them. That's like his whole career. So to
Mm-hmm.
see him actually put together a well thought out match with Gunther, it's encouraging for his future with the company because you're like, okay, good match, actually good match, like actually entertaining. So
Yeah. Yeah,
hopefully,
he lost, but it was good work by him. This
yeah,
may have been the best we've seen from Strowman, even though
this
he
is
technically loses the match.
this is definitely the best. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
usually just squash match stuff. So, anyways, so that's probably the best match of the night. And then kind of how what you alluded to, a lot of fluff in the middle of the match, but or middle of the
There were
night.
two other matches on this show. Do you remember them?
Boy, well, if I didn't look at my notes, they might already be gone. Uh, but so I would say, yeah. So the other match we had, probably the next one up is Raquel Rodriguez versus Liv Morgan. That was okay, you know. That was
Started better than it finished, right? I mean, this match was pretty good when it started, but and they also threw in some of the Royal Rumble stuff where early on Raquel throws Liv Morgan over the top rope, just be like, if this were the Royal Rumble, you'd be eliminated. And then Liv tries to do it to the much bigger Raquel Rodriguez and can't get her over the top rope, which, again, try to do something and fail. So when you hit it later, it's a big deal. Well, later on, Liv winds up actually getting Raquel over the top rope. I think it was looked like a clothesline or something. But it worked later on. And then, unfortunately, this match broke down because now they're on the outside. And now what was a pretty good wrestling match between two of the women who can really work in the
yeah.
ring. Like sometimes, and we see a women's match, and we'll talk about this when we mention briefly the other women's match. We see a women's match, and sometimes the women move in slow motion. Like they're doing the things the men do, but it's just slower. Liv Morgan is not slower. Liv Morgan works with the speed of a luchador. And Raquel Rodriguez, for being the biggest, strongest woman in the locker room, she can do that style too. She can take that punishment and she can execute herself. This was a pretty good match until they started setting up for, well, we want a table spot on the outside, which winds up not even being a table spot. It just winds up this awkward, like, minute and a half, 2 minutes of Liv Morgan sliding back into the ring to break up the referee's count, sliding back out to try and set up more of the table, and then finally putting Raquel Rodriguez on the table. And
That's the
then
second.
Raquel,
That's the second time we have seen Raquel Rodriguez involved in some goofball table spot on the outside that takes forever to set up
forever.
and just sucks the wind out of the room and nobody
Yes.
cares. And you're just like, all
Yeah,
right.
because like it was a fast moving match, and then suddenly, thrown into the ring steps, and Raquel's just down while Liv is able to, walk around the ring, find the table, drag it across to another corner so it's on still a better camera angle by the announce table, set up the thing, put Raquel on the table. But then Raquel just kind of gets her bearings because it took so long and slides off the table and back into the ring. And now they're back into the ring. But at this point, they've lost their momentum. And I remember writing that down, it was a good match early until Liv sets up the table on the outside. And I wrote down that broke all momentum.
Right.
Liv never gets to use the table. Raquel winds up winning with that one arm slam of hers, which is a very good big wrestler move. Wins on that for the pin, but it was a little anticlimactic. They were having a much bigger match. They did the allusions to the Royal Rumble match, which I think both of these women will be participating in the Women's Royal Rumble. So they
they
got
never
that
got
kind of.
to the table.
Pardon?
They never got to the table.
They never went through the table.
That's got to be a botch.
They never went through the table. It was just there
Why
to,
would
like,
you,
I guess, make the crowd go, "Ooh, it's a table."
but like, why would you bring out the table and then never deliver on it? That doesn't make any sense.
It's a swerve.
It's a swerve.
It's a swerve. Hey, Vince McMahon's back. Maybe Vince Russo's back. It's a swerve.
Is it?
It's a table that nobody uses.
Is it really?
You thought we were going to use the table. Swerve. It's just furniture.
Right. Swerve. Yeah.
It's just there to make you lose all momentum and interest in the match.
Right.
So they can have an anticlimactic finish with the table still set up on the outside.
Oh my God.
Swerve,
man. So I'll tell you what. I saw Raquel Rodriguez at the end. She gets the pin and she looks like she lost. That's always a sign that they didn't perform that well or as well as they wanted to. Because she's just like 1, 2, 3, and she's like, you could just sort of see it written on her face, like this didn't feel good for her. But
she was angry going into the match. She was ticked off. They set this up pretty well during the show. That a lot of the women were backstage, kind of giving a little ribbing to Liv Morgan for saying the previous week that she wants to be the first entrant into the Royal Rumble. She doesn't want to be number 30. She wants to be the first one out there and outlast everybody. And they're like saying, really, for you, the smallest one? Like, wouldn't you rather wait till the end, someone of your size? And of course, there's Raquel Rodriguez who comes into the picture to add to it. And so this became a little of, Liv kind of, doing the fake, well, I just had my palm read or something. Why don't you read my palm? And it's the oldest thing. They're like, oh, look at your hand, slap.
Right.
And that leads to Raquel, like, I'm sick and tired. I'm the biggest, strongest one in the locker room. So it was kind of like Raquel was annoyed that she had to be out there at all.
Yeah.
And maybe she still is a little bit selling her left elbow, which they wrap. When it's not wrapped in the back, first of all, you can tell her that she has good definition in her arms, but there looks to be like a nasty bruise there. So it may be that she really does need to have that wrapped for something else, and that they just played the storyline into it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, Raquel looked annoyed that she had to wrestle this match at all. She may still be selling a little bit of injury, but I mean, anticlimactic. We had one really good match that actually finished, one that didn't finish at the end that was the main event. This match we just talked about that finished, but anticlimactically. We had one
Yeah.
other match. Do you remember what it was? It wasn't that good.
Unfortunately, and only because I was like, "Oh, who's this person from China?" And they announced she's from like the way they said the name of the city in
Mm-hmm.
China. I was like, I don't think that's a city in China. I think that's where I was like, oh, Vince is back, huh? Because here comes somebody from China, and what does she have? She's like doing ninja stuff with stars, and like she's a ninja, and I'm like, oh my
Sure.
god,
Of course.
here we go with the cringy
Xia Li
stereo.
versus Tegan Knox.
Yeah, so the cringy stereotype thing that you'd see like in the 80s and early 90s of all the Asians, like still has like the hints of that, which are just it's just stupid. So
Short
anyway,
match. Short match. Tegan Knox wins with what they call the Shining Wizard. Um, okay. Um, Interesting because Xia Li's return was costing Tegan Knox a tag team match when she and Liv Morgan were going against Damage Control for with the belts on the line, I think. And Tegan has not. She's had a very lackluster return to WWE here.
yeah,
I guess they needed her to get something on the board. So it did that. Nothing else really. It wasn't a very memorable match move wise. Tegan is eh. I mean, she does her moves, but she does them like at 3/4 speed. Xia Li looks like she can strike, looks a little more athletic, but of course, she was letting Tegan Knox go over in this match. Um, Kind of forgettable. I mean, at some point, Xia Li has to get something going. I mean, she's been the person who made her re-entry into the WWE by attacking someone from the outside while wearing a mask and a hood and everything. So it'll be interesting to see what they have planned for her. But Tegan gets a W, something in the win column for her. Not a great match.
felt like the bathroom break match. It was like
Almost right, yeah.
you're like, all right, you see who's coming out. It's
The
Tegan Knox.
bathroom
We
break
both
match in a show full of bathroom break vignettes.
right. Um, Tegan Knox, don't know much about her. We haven't seen her too much. She came
Not too
back a
much.
couple weeks ago and hasn't done a whole ton. So uh I guess good for her to get a win. You probably want a better showing as like you're coming back though. But
Mm-hmm.
didn't get a lot of time and I don't know. Just that very forgettable. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the vignettes. So I touched on it a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So Rey Mysterio and Karion Kross. Karion Kross can kind of talk. He's
Yeah, he's not bad.
I was sort of shocked because the gimmick is so lousy and he's got a woman that goes out with him. So I assume
Mm.
she would do the
Scarlet.
talking. Scarlett, yeah, I figured she'd do the talking. And the gimmick's just so confusing because now he's in a dress shirt and a tie, and I'm like, now what is it? Because before he was like a dancer, and now it's like, then he was like something demonic, and now he's just
Yeah, yeah.
in a tie. I don't know. So, but then he talked. I was like, oh wow, they should really just cut a lot of this stuff and maybe have him talk a bit more because he seemed like he actually was pretty good in there on the mic.
100% agree. The recorded stuff for him, it's overproduced and it's the kind of stuff you would do for someone who did not have decent mic skills and presence. But they're letting him do more of that. They started a few weeks ago where he went into the training room while Ray was getting some treatment.
Hmm.
And they had Cross really start then, without being so crazy and with all the get up. Just cut the promo. Your real sinister feeling promo. And he does the same thing tonight. You know, guys don't always need all of the the distractions to get their character over, and maybe that this is, I think, a better direction for Karion Kross to just see if he can work on the mic, and instead of relying on a pre-recorded produced vignette that everybody just watches on the big screen, yeah, come out and have a confrontation with a guy in the ring, even if it's not a match. Just like march out there and microphone to microphone, take on Ray, and then yes, we get a little physicality there at the end, and Karion Kross puts Ray into the cross jacket sleeper hold and leaves Ray lying in the. I'll get my consonants correct.
I
Just give
got
me a
you.
chance. You
I
got me.
follow it.
Leaves Ray lying in the ring. So good segment there. You got in the thing where even Karion Kross is making fun of the family drama. So it's not just us. It's not just us getting tired of this family drama angle with the Mysterios. Karion Kross is there too. Like, Karion Kross is us.
Yes.
Karion Kross is every man in this thing.
It's weird because that's a really tough thing to screw up. But they made it all like an episode of Cops, which is really strange. And it's like you couldn't, again, just kept it a little bit more simple. Like, oh, son is a scumbag, father's disappointed, father's a legend, everybody likes him.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty hard to screw that up. Oh, let's make it like a weird Cops segment where there's this blow off in a house for some reason. Like, you just don't really need that.
They did
So
that twice. Once for Thanksgiving, that didn't work. They did it again for Christmas.
I would guess.
Like, thank goodness there's no more holidays for a while. We get more of these crappy vignettes.
Yeah. So that's that's kind of what I had for Karion Kross. I just said the gimmick's weird and actually not too bad on the mic. And then another vignette, or I should say another segment that I wasn't big on, was Charlotte Flair and Sonya Deville in the back. They had this tearaway brawl kind of in the back. I like tearaway brawls. I probably would rather it be in the ring, but even in the back, they did this and really what ruined it was they did this shaky camera thing. Okay. So like, where the camera, they intentionally shake the camera around while they're like doing the brawl. So, you're like this the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, throwing the punches, and you're just like, stop. It just like makes me dizzy. And it makes it look fake as hell. And they're really laying, they could be just laying them in too. And you can't even see it because you're just screwing with the camera.
Yeah, my notes for this one were Sonya Deville attacked Charlotte Flair backstage as the least competent officials in the world try to break up the fight. Were any like really that you guys can't do this? And Charlotte keeps trying to be the good one, like, oh, I let her go, and she keeps turning her back. Like, my goodness, like, watch a prison movie or something. You don't turn your back.
Yeah, no, that sequence was awkward with her. And she's like, I'm done. And then she doesn't face her opponent. And you could tell, like, I don't know if Sonya took a while to get. It's not really, it's a tearaway brawl. It's like the easiest thing on the planet. I just don't, it's not really that hard. But for me, it was just the shaky camera that sort of screwed it up. But whatever.
It means that they think that Charlotte Flair, Sonya Deville has some legs to it. They can have a match again, not just last week's, and maybe that's what Charlotte needs. I mean, it was a multi-week program with Sonya Deville that helped Liv Morgan's character take a step up after the Ronda Rousey Extreme Rules match. And maybe now it's going to be a multi-week program with Sonya Deville that kind of gets Charlotte Flair back into ring shape after being out of wrestling for several months, for half a year or so. So, maybe Sonya Deville's in this position where, she's a really good worker. She's a safe worker, and she'll put on decent matches. And, she she brings good work out of the other person.
Yeah, like a good, kind of our Ricochet.
What Ricochet was for September, October, and most of November.
Yeah, where she'll lose, but hey, at least she can go in the ring and it'll be any sort of improvement from Rousey, except for Ronda Rousey. Her last match was good.
And she's now on the SmackDown thumbnail. When I go to foxsports.com, I'm now seeing, I used to be seeing Brock Lesnar, Charlotte Flair, and Sasha Banks. 0 for 3. I'm now seeing Brock Lesnar, Charlotte Flair, and Ronda Rousey, which is like 1 for 3. And if Ronda's still around, 2 for 3. But again, like their thumbnails are trailing what's happening on the program by like what, a year, 6 months?
Yes, I know.
So maybe this means that Ronda's back, or maybe it means that she's gone forever because now she's on the thumbnail.
Right.
Once you get on the thumbnail, it's like you disappear.
You're right. The thumbnail. The thumbnail.
Like, heaven forbid they promote somebody who's actually on the show.
Damn show. We see Guenther every week. You can't put him up there.
He's nowhere near the thumbnail. No.
Nowhere near it.
No Guenther, no Ricochet, no Bloodline.
And you would think Roman Reigns would be the guy on the thumbnail.
Yeah, sure, right?
He's their top guy. He's their champ. Nah, it's Brock Lesnar. Who is he still even wrestling? He hasn't been mentioned. Boy,
we need Stephanie McMahon back as chief brand officer to get these thumbnails taken care of. I hear she's got some extra time on her hands now.
She is
wink.
She is available. Right, her calendar is wide open. Poor Stephanie.
Right. So, but before we get into maybe some of that news, you want to go like lightning round through some of these other vignettes? We saw a lot of stuff. I mean, not just vignettes, but in-ring stuff and backstage interviews. Bray Wyatt sitting in the rocking chair. Thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you think?
Why don't you cover that one? Because I didn't catch all of that.
Okay. Bray's in the rocking chair. First of all, it took him forever to get down there because it takes him forever to do that. Mm-hmm. I'm remembering you describing, how WWE used to open shows with these long promo segments, and how Jim Cornette used to say, I could watch the opening segment, get up, go make a sandwich, come back, they're still in the opening segment talking. I go eat the sandwich, come back, they're still in the opening segment talking. You could almost do that with Bray Wyatt trying to get down to the ring.
Yeah.
Like the lights go out and you start hearing the music, you could get up, go make a sandwich, come back, and he's like staring at his lantern, he's halfway down the ramp. Go back, eat the sandwich, come back, and he's finally in the ring, now sitting in a rocking chair. Now we get some talking out of him that he's trying to get back to his true self, like something about Uncle Howdy giving him the Sister Abigail. He's now realizing that he's the color red in a world of black and white. He is Bray Wyatt, the eater of worlds. And then he goes, I am Uncle Howdy. Which is getting a little weird because we saw Uncle Howdy, and that's a different person. At least it was the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's like Bray is having this character transformation, which usually happens after you have a few matches and things don't go your way, or you have a few matches and stuff goes your way. This guy has still not had a match. He's had a lifetime of like turns on himself. He still hasn't had a match. I want him to have a match. At this point, it's just filler.
It's not good.
Have a match. Have the match. You and LA Knight. Yes. Have that match. I like it. Get in the ring. Have the match.
Please. Yeah. I don't know. If again, it's the same thing I'll say each week. If LA Knight wasn't in this rivalry, I'd be like, please get it off the screen. But just because LA Knight has been strong, and they're really, this is really tough to make this sort of thing, this rivalry interesting at this point, because there hasn't been any conflict really with them physically, and it's way overdue.
That we know of.
It's been way overdue, right? Like this, they built this up Bray's got all kinds of weird stuff going on that isn't even really connected. It just like, I don't know. I don't get it.
His
Yeah.
opponent is himself still.
Yes.
That doesn't make for good pro wrestling, because when it comes time for the payoff, you can't. What are you gonna do? Small package yourself and just like keep your shoulders down to the mat?
Right.
Who wins?
Yeah.
Right?
It's
You know,
just,
is your record 1-1 after that? I mean, and that's the problem I think we're both seeing, is the Bray Wyatt stuff is too Bray Wyatt centered, even with 3 months after he debuted, when it should be opponent focused.
yeah, not a huge surprise Vince did what he did back then, because right now you're like, I don't know what they're doing with this guy. I don't know. For me, it's almost like maybe there's an audience that likes this and I'm not it. Or am I, is it just completely missing with everybody?
It's
I
you.
don't know.
Everybody loves this. It's the
Everybody loves
greatest 10 minutes of television every week. It's
it.
you.
It's,
You're the one who just doesn't get it.
it's just the theme song, which isn't even good. It's not even a good song. So you're like, all right, big theme
It's
song.
creepy-ish. I like it as like an intro for the creepiness.
Yes.
But like other than that, like, okay, we got to get back to wrestler entrances being like 30 seconds long, just to like give you that aha. It's like his name. It's like, oh, he's here.
He's
Like
here.
Steve Austin, the glass breaks. That's all you need. The
Mhm.
glass breaks. I don't even know what the rest of the song was. I just know the glass breaks and Steve came marching out and he got to the ring, and then you didn't need the music anymore because then they were getting to the ring. Now it's like they want the songs to play for 4 or 5 minutes. Like, do they want to pay royalties? What's going on?
I, either that or they paid too much for it and they trying to get their money's worth. I don't know.
Yeah, is the guy
Uh,
on staff and he's got it in his contract? You have to play my whole song. Make him stare at his lantern for 4 minutes. Play my whole song.
stare at the lantern for 4 minutes while everyone is just waiting around and like,
Yeah,
all right,
the moth. We got the moth in the rocking chair tonight. I want to see the match.
yeah.
So for me, that was teetering to thumbs down. We got some backstage interviews. How about Kevin Owens? And he immediately interrupted by Sami Zayn.
Maybe you could take that one as well because I am blanking on it.
Uh, Rather civil for two guys who are supposed to be, having a grudge match later. But it you almost get the feeling that this is like two brothers who, brothers get into fights, but afterwards they just like, they make up. Like Sammy comes in and kind of crashes the interview, and like they're almost trying to go there to their past, but they don't. And it was just more of, to me, it was more of what's Kevin Owens' motivation for this and what's Sammy's motivation for this. So it was more just kind of casting doubt onto the whole larger story arc that they're in. Um, it confused the heck out of the poor interviewer who did not even get out one question, just stood there like looking scared with the microphone, and eventually, every now and then, just pointing it to the other guy as one guy started yelling, and then another guy yells, and she did,
Yeah.
So just some little awkwardness. But for what they were trying to do with the match, I mean, interesting to a point that these guys just don't slug it out anytime they see each other. So
I
interesting
know.
to a point there. The Banger Bros. Do we like the Banger Bros? Drew McIntyre and Sheamus.
I like the tag team combo. I like the idea.
WWE does also. They're keeping it going. This was
Um,
not a one-off. This was not just a remnant of Survivor Series and War Games. And they've got a gimmick.
yeah.
They've got a name and they've got a gimmick where they sit there in interviews or just in conversations, and like they start arguing and just stiff slapping each other in the chest. And it's like a term of endearment for each other. It's like, oh, boom. And it's like, no, it's like love taps, and they're like clubbing each other in the chest, and then it just ends with them going, bangers, bangers, bangers.
Oh, banger after banger after banger.
Banger
That'll
after
probably catch on.
banger after banger. They're the banger bros. So they're trying to give them a gimmick. It's a little bit of comedy. It's a little lighthearted.
Mm,
It gives two veterans something to do when they're not in a title picture.
yeah.
And apparently they're going to be working with the Viking Raiders. So, of the lower tier tag teams that, WWE, they're looking for someone to push to try and build up the tag team division. Besides putting together two really good veterans who used to be A-listers, Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, it looks like the Viking Raiders are getting a shot here.
Yeah. That's a good idea. And I don't know much about the Viking Raiders, to be honest with you. And I
I don't
haven't
think
seen
anybody
them.
does.
Yeah. And
We're going to find out.
Let's see what they got. 4 big guys in there, which will be interesting.
Yep. Big guys who can move, though.
When we had the triple threat tag match, that was alarming. Like, oh yeah, there is no depth, right? So putting 2 guys right now together that you at least know their names, Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, and just like, this is a team, the guys from their runs in WWE. They're not doing much right now, so just have them be a tag.
It's a good gimmick. It's a good gimmick, and it's a good use of talent who can obviously work.
Yeah.
Like not everybody can have a belt, so other guys need to be interesting without a belt. These guys are interesting. Now they're a tag team. I think they become more interesting. I don't know what this means for the Brawling Brutes, for Butch and for Ridge Hollins. Looks like they're kind of getting pushed off to the side here, but I think it could be a good run for Sheamus with Drew McIntyre.
Yeah. Okay, so we're
Cody Rhodes video. Do we like that they're like trying to push Cody Rhodes? We don't even know if he's ready to wrestle yet. Like today's vignette was building on the vignette we saw a couple of weeks ago. This one was more about his Extreme Rules match with Seth Rollins following his injury and the surgery that he had to have. But I mean, it seems they're optimistic he can return, but still no indication. These are recorded vignettes. We're not even seeing him come out and address people live in the arena. So they expect Cody Rhodes to be ready soon, and they're trying to prime the audience to expect it. Anybody who knows wrestling history from the last 10 years has to know Cody Rhodes and from other promotions as well. I mean, great performer, but is he ready? WWE seems to hope so. We'll see. I'm interested in Cody Rhodes if he's ready.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, if he came back to SmackDown, that would be a big addition. He did a lot of great stuff in AEW, New Japan, Ring of Honor. In between he's one of the guys that
won the NWA belt, didn't he?
Yeah,
bringing a little shine back to the oldest championship in the U.S., the NWA Heavyweight Championship.
Even his promos were when he was on Raw, and he's come back with these American Nightmare gimmick. His babyface promos were really good, and that is really hard to do. Is the babyface promo that's not like horrible.
Yep.
So I'm excited for him to come back. He would be a big asset on the show, and he's done a lot of good stuff before. So,
that's all I got for tonight's program, the Friday the 13th episode of SmackDown.
Yeah. Well, Dom, thanks so much for joining tonight. And then, as we always say here,
did this look like a Vince show?
There are 2 things
He's back. Stephanie McMahon was stepped down as CEO. Vince is trying to sell the company. It's been quite a week behind the scenes in WWE. Does this look like Vince is asserting himself into creative yet? Definitely. If you expect it to happen eventually, if you don't expect it to happen eventually, what did you think here?
So two big indicators. The Asian star coming out like a ninja,
Okay.
that's Vince written all over it. Because I never really saw her do like ninja things.
Yeah.
So that's Vince written all over it. And then the shaky camera, this thing, the
That's
shaky,
Vince. Okay.
that's Vince. Stupid shaky camera. Like, and it's so cringe, and he doesn't even care. He's just like, yeah, do the shaky camera.
Lots of promos, lots of vignettes, long vignettes. We didn't get the promo to open the show. They gave us the match of the night to open the show, but slow moving vignette and backstage and anything else but a match for most of this show.
Yes.
Does it look like Vince? And is that a
Yeah.
good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think he's clearly, now that he's back, I think he's probably always been there, right? Because
Okay.
he stepped down and retired, and then 3 months later, forcefully comes in, fires members of the board, and is like, "I'm back,"
Yeah.
and like put people in place that will just vote for whatever he says. So
Sure.
it's just like, all right, well, I doubt he was too far away from the picture anyway. Comes in, fires his daughter.
No, she just stepped aside. She took her leave before and just came back to be co-CEO, and now she's just making her leave permanent. You wonder why she came back as co-CEO. Was it just so that the investors could see someone named McMahon involved with the company in the C-suite?
It could be also him pandering to women after being a creepy old man and paying people to
Okay,
stay up to sleep with him.
there you
He
go.
was pandering to the people he had wronged. Just like, fine, we'll make a woman CEO. It's my daughter, and when I come back, that'll be partially forgiven. So yeah, I think that's why she got the push, if you will, to CEO. Um,
Stock is holding steady around $90 a share, which is where it got to last week when it spiked on the news.
yeah,
So at this point, it seems like investors have settled into what they think a WWE with Vince McMahon back and exploring a sale is kind of worth on the open market.
mhm.
Now, whether Vince is really here to explore a sale or if he's just here to like be Vince again, I don't know. I mean, there were
Well,
people jumped on early rumors with it. We were told a Saudi investor with ties to Saudi Arabia had bought it, which frankly would have been just a death sentence for the WWE as we know it. Because, like Sami Zayn was not allowed to travel to um, Crown Jewel in November because
because
he's
of the
he's he's the
Syrian,
wrong type of Middle Eastern heritage for the
yeah,
Saudis. They don't like the women wrestling, and some of the women are some of the big stars here. They put on good matches and they're good characters and they're entertaining. I mean that would have been really the death knell for what we know the WWE to have become. So that was kind of quashed as not a real story anyway. It was just somebody throwing out a rumor. I
yeah.
think because you've mentioned before that WWE makes so much money on Crown Jewel that people were just kind of going, who could possibly buy the WWE? Like who has that amount of capital, financial capital available to put into this and would
They're probably
also
looking,
like wrestling because not everybody likes this product. And
you know,
so it was kind of, it's kind of built from there like, oh, the Saudis could do it. Let's say there's a Saudi investor that wants to buy it, but not credible.
so um, like it's a great point about people not really liking wrestling, and that's like with
It killed
Disney.
WCW. It wasn't that bad a product. It was just that their parent company didn't want wrestling on their TV network anymore.
And we've seen that in the past. Like the pro wrestling outdraws the NHL, and TNT has NHL, but they kind of prefer the type of people that would watch an NHL game over a pro wrestling
Yeah.
game for whatever reason. It's just still like frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, you'll see them sort of push the NHL. They would prefer to have the NHL, even though the ratings are lower. So, anyways,
Better for their image, maybe better for a lot of the large advertisers who buy up a lot of the general spots in your program, not just your content specific advertising slots. Maybe that, but
it's really weird to think, you know, who's going to buy it, and the Saudi thing. So, was reading about the Saudi thing, and one of the things is UFC when they sold themselves, there were all kinds of wild, bogus reports of who
okay.
was going to buy it. And I don't know if that's just to drum up interest of potential people that are purchasing it. Like
Hmm.
maybe they're like, oh, we need to buy it now before whoever from the Saudi Arabia buys it, or whoever from Disney buys it, or whoever
Hmm.
from Apple. I don't know. Just naming some of the big alphabet companies here. Google. Who knows who's gonna or Amazon. Somebody's gonna make a big splash. Uh,
If
but
you're trying to sell the company, it typically benefits you to have news of there being interest.
mhm.
Like, if you have a garage sale and nobody shows up, then you just got a bunch of crap still in
Right?
your garage that you're not
Yeah.
going to move into your garage because you moved it out onto your driveway. So if Vince is back to sell the company, then there has to be news that there's interest. So to a certain extent, it's always going to benefit the seller if there are news reports that there is buyer interest.
Mhm.
Now, the wrong kind of buyer interest could be a problem. And I think you were kind of going in this direction with what you were saying. Like, if it's the wrong kind of company, or um, if too many fake stories um, are reported as real news, then it becomes, boy who cried wolf, and it becomes, oh, wait a minute, that's going to harm the product. This thing isn't going to be worth too much.
Yeah.
And what Vince doesn't want, if he's really trying to sell the company, is he doesn't want the excitement that brought the stock value to 90 to dissipate. Like maybe it doesn't keep going up, but if it holds at 90 and they have sort of a $6 billion market cap, then that means that the person who buys it has to pay 6 billion plus a premium.
Mhm.
So maybe 8 billion. If the market cap dropped back to 5, then somebody can say, "Oh, this isn't going very well, is it?
Right. Right.
I'll give you 6 for it before it drops even further. If the
Yeah.
stock takes another tumble, I'm coming back with 5.5." So now that they got some excitement, now they have to cash in on it, and they don't want. I mean, it can't just be a straight line, but
No.
they don't want it bouncing and especially getting on a downward trend. So he wants there to be some news that, like, he announced the sale. There's got to be somebody interested,
Yeah.
but who and who is legitimate?
Who's legit? Who's just entertaining it? Who's got $5 billion? Not a lot of people.
Who's
You
got
know?
who can raise $8 billion quickly? I
Yeah.
heard that the father of Tony Khan, who owns AEW. Now, the Khans, Nick Khan, who's the CEO, is not related to Tony Khan at AEW, nor that Khan family that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, because it's the Khan who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. His son is Tony, who owns All Elite Wrestling, right?
Yeah.
And those are not related in any way to Nick Khan,
No, it's
who
a
is now the
coincidence.
sole CEO of WWE. Okay, so there's nothing there. But I heard that the other Khan, Tony Khan, like maybe the Jags could buy it.
Yeah.
I mean,
It would be pretty wild if Vince got bought out by the competitor in some
Vince
sort of.
did that.
Vince was the original guy that did that.
Vince was the originator of that buy out the territories, and then he bought out WCW. I mean, I don't know if they bought out the territories as much as they just kind of bullied their way in and then had to set up shop and spend money in going national. But yeah, that's Vince's move, right?
I almost feel like I wonder with Vince's ego, would he even be willing to just sell to a competitor? Like, what's the point of all those billions of dollars if he's like stewing about it later on?
Sure.
He's so competitive with all that stuff and really gets him going. So
And does he want this for his legacy? That he's the guy who came in and sold the product and it went downhill.
You also have to realize this. He is crazy right now. Like, he is not all there. So
I did not know that. I mean, he's always been.
He's never been all there, but I think it's a bit more apparent now. You know, he's lived his whole life doing tons of steroids, sleeping 3 hours a night. Like, it's going to catch up to you, you know, like this high pressure life. And I think it has for him, because he was on TV like a couple times, and you're like, who is this? He's aging poorly. He's in his mid 70s, and you're like, wow, he looks like crap now. You know, he sounds like crap.
He's always been a risk taker, and entrepreneurs have to be like that. You can't be normal and build the things that Vince McMahon has built. You have to be in some ways outside of the Overton window.
It's so strange because he's always played a character on TV, and he hasn't done a lot of the shoot stuff where you get like the real behind the scenes Vince too much. You're always kind of getting like a weird caricature whenever he's like talking. So it's always just weird. It really blurs the lines. Like, I just can't help but think of him as Mr. McMahon, that character. But it kind of.
I'm going to flip this on you. I'm going to flip this on you and say Vince McMahon was playing a character early in his career when he was the straight-laced commentator and interviewer. Like that was Vince in character. And the Mr. McMahon that emerged later is more like what he's like in real life. He's a risk taker. He wants growth. He wants his kind of change. He wants to be in charge. He's a control freak. Or, I mean, that sounds kind of mean. Okay, he's not a control freak, but like we all to some degree have controlling tendencies.
Yeah,
Vince has a lot of them, and Vince has been successful in acting upon them. Yeah. It's how he built his business. It's why he kept 80% of the voting power in these Class B shares of WWE stock for himself, which is how he could just step aside and then decide, you know what? I can vote myself back in.
What's the point of voting?
I'm going to play that card. And here's the best part. It's a card I can play that I don't actually have to give up. Like in Monopoly, you got to give up your, get out of jail free card. And I think they mentioned this on SmackDown tonight in some context. So I'm stealing it from the Tonight Show. Mm-hmm. But like Vince doesn't even have to give up that card.
No.
He's like, get out of jail. Vince played his get out of jail free card, and it's like permanently his.
He does the thing that like the dictators where they get like 95% of the vote.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this election is definitely not real. Like with Putin or
Saddam Hussein, anybody.
Yeah, he was a big. He would always do these free elections, and Vince kind of does that right now. It's like, oh yeah, well, everybody voted me in.
There's way too much unanimity going on in WWE releases, right? Like they unanimously condemned Vince and said they didn't want him to have any part of the program when he left, and now they've unanimously welcomed him back,
even though it was doing better.
Real with, I mean, and this is what I mean. Why I think the Vince character was him playing the straight-laced announcers. Like everything in his real life looks like a pro wrestling work. Like he's unanimously being ousted, and then a few months later, he's unanimously brought back.
Right.
Like everything's a work.
It is all 100%.
One way or another, Vince is back.
Yes. All right,
I hope we don't get another show like this, though, because it was way too little good wrestling and way too much recorded vignettes and matches that were anticlimactic in their finishes. So, I mean, for 1 week, fine, and Guenther saves the show, and Sami and Kevin Owens giving us 15 good minutes in the main event saves the show. But I don't want to see too much more of this. This should not be the norm for the TV product.
No, it wasn't a very good show. It was pretty much all Guenther, and then everything else was pretty much fluff.
Yep.
So, Dom, on that note, I think we kind of wrapped up this SmackDown here. Had some great additional commentary here at the end. We got to talk
Yes.
about the things that are trending in WWE and the big, big thing that has been trending for quite some time now is Vince McMahon's return. Where the
Don't
company's
bury the
headed.
lead, even if it's out of the ring and off the show, right? We hit every lead possible tonight. In
Absolutely.
ring, out of ring, boardroom, arena. We
Right.
did it all.
Well, thanks so much for joining, everyone. We appreciate it. We're here every Friday night. Dom, thanks as always for doing this, man. I
Like,
appreciate
comment,
it.
subscribe. Don't bury the lead.
There you go. Don't bury the lead, everyone. Have a great